Bue-Said, who's the Chief Executive at Vantage Travel Partnership, that is the UK's largest independent travel agency. Julia, thank you for your time this morning. It's such a state of flux right now. You may get a glimmer of hope from Boris Johnson later today. We could see an expansion, a modest extension of the green list, and this change to amber list rules so that people who've been double jabbed don't need to quarantine on their return to the UK. What's your sense?
Good morning. Well, I think an expansion of a list where really there are only 2 countries that are viable in Europe that we can travel to, even a modest expansion would be, we feel very grateful for that. But really, we need a real meaningful start to make any difference to the summer. So an expansion from, say, just 2 countries at the minute, which is Gibraltar and Iceland, that really are the only viable destinations on the list out of the whole world. We need to see much more added onto that. I think the news from Germany today is probably not a surprise, and I think we should be concerned about that, because no matter what's on the green list, what we also need to align that with is the other countries, the destination countries, opening their borders to Brits as well. So there's a lot that needs to be realigned here.
Yeah, I mean, Julie, just on the point about Germany, I mean, there are relatively modest numbers of Brits at any time who would be looking to spend their summer holidays in Germany, but their current quarantine regime is 14 days. If you fly into Germany and you're going to do that for very specific reasons right now, you're expected to spend 14 days in quarantine. Is it your concern that the Germans will have an expectation that if there is a pan-European rule on quarantine, it will be at their upper end of the scale, 14 days for Brits coming in, or perhaps a little bit modest, more like the Italians got a 5-day quarantine period? Any sense at all of what we're looking at?
Yeah, I think the concern really is any isolation requirement, whether it's 5 days, 14 days for Brits travelling anywhere in Europe, is really going to be a deterrent. I mean, if you take the holiday market, from the UK, families normally typically spend about 10 to 14 days, away in the summer holidays. 5 days isolation, 14 days isolation, well, that's going to be a huge deterrent. But it is the pan-European nature that we should be concerned about. I think it'll be interesting whether we hear from the UK government today around announcement on double vaccination, what that means for us for Brits travelling back. I mean, the UK government can't control what happens where we go to, but it's all about the traffic light system is all about returning back into the UK and what rules are applying.
You mentioned this pan-European approach there, and from next week, new EU-wide rules will be introduced, which will allow vaccinated people to move freely within the Schengen area, although individual countries will be allowed to make their own rules. Does it seem unfair to you that Europeans, if it is based on the science as they're saying, vaccinated Europeans, EU citizens, will be allowed to travel potentially from next week, but vaccinated Brits won't? I mean, where's the scientific logic in that? Do you feel that there's something dodgy going on there?
I think dodgy is the word, probably. No, I think it's grossly unfair. I think it's grossly unfair for the British public that we have one of the highest rollouts of vaccination. We're now 70% of our adult population has had at least a single dose, 50% double dose, and we are more restricted than ever. We have more restrictions on us for travelling than we had last year, and yet the government have a framework in place that would allow travel to restart in a safe manner. And I just want to highlight, it's worth mentioning, even with the traffic light framework that we have, and we start off by talking about the green list countries, if you travel back from a green list country, you have to take a test before you sit on the plane. So green is not green without any testing, without investigation. You must take a test as a minimum. You cannot sit on the plane without that. You have to take at least 1 test when you return. So it's a framework that would allow safe mitigation, safe restart. So when we then try to understand the scientific analysis behind the data that's being used, it's not there. We cannot see it. So very frustrating, and it does unfortunately does make you slightly concerned as to what the rationale and the reasoning behind the decisions that are being made.
Julia, just a broad point, leaving aside the technicalities of amber, green lists and quarantine periods, all the rest of it, but just, do you worry, do your colleagues in the travel industry worry right now that the habit of going abroad, the habit of independent travel UK to 4, is going to be potentially lost to a generation or a cohort that's moving through, they've never developed the habit, and people who had the habit and were used to 2-3 holidays a year through companies like yours actually realise that it is possible to do staycations, and some of them may prefer them, who knows? But the point is that the habit of holidaying to some degree is lost. How recapturable and how quickly is it?
I don't agree. I think 60 million Brits take 2019 took a trip, whether that's for business, friends and family. Let's not forget 1 in 3 of us are multi-generational with families abroad. So actually the need to travel is not just about holidays. We've got families that are split up all around the world, haven't seen each other. So I don't think the habit will go away. I think, given the complexities of travel, consumers need confidence that travel can be done and it can be done without any last-minute changes. The biggest impact we see to changing behaviour and changing habits is when the government make very last-minute decisions that create panic and uncertainty, like we saw in Portugal recently, where consumers are